Hello? Can you hear me? Mike, can you hear me now? Oh, I can't believe this. I did this whole thing and my mic was on mute the whole time. I've been streaming now for a half hour. I can't believe I just did 30 minutes with my mic on mute. Oh, wow. This is terrible for me. It sounds like something I would do, not just because I did it, but it just sounds like something I would do. Wow. So, for just joining in, I was talking about simple storytelling. And I think I'm going to have to delete the stream or at least edit it down and cut out everything I did. Wow, this sucks. I'm just laughing. Sorry, it's going to take me a moment. I'm just laughing at myself right now because there were other people watching. I wish they told me about the sound earlier. Okay, whatever. It's no big deal. I don't care. Crap happens, right? So I'm just going to do a quick recap of what I was doing and then talk about some things. So basically what I did for... Oh, no worries. I thought you were doing a mime thing. Oh, no, I'm very bad at that. Very bad at miming. Although, because I'm on a screen, right? Can I do the trapped in a box? Because, I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter. So, here's what's going on. I'm a... for those just tuning in and not knowing me, I'm a cartoonist. I've used other words you can use for me: illustrator, writer, animator. I've done a lot of different things. I've worked in video game development, graphic design, puppetry, but whatever I've done, my job has been a storyteller. And that's what these Saturday morning streams are about. My love is storytelling. And whether I'm doing it through comics or animation or whatever, I just love to tell stories. So even though I may go by cartoonist because that's how people understand it, my job is I'm a storyteller, and that's what I consider myself first and foremost. I even taught storytelling at a college for 16 years. I still do, not at the same college, but I guest speak at colleges, and I go to libraries and schools, and I talk about that stuff, although the pandemic's kind of hurt that. Actually, a friend of mine who works for a library had to take some time off, and I'm doing one of his jobs right now, which is every Thursday night. And my first one was this past Thursday. I host a Dungeons and Dragons game, and I'm the DM. Which, if you don't know Dungeons and Dragons, basically, I narrate a story. I ask the kids, or the players, what do you want to do? They discuss how they want to do things. I tell them, okay, roll your die and tell me what, and whatever you get, I'll tell you if you succeed or fail. Okay. And we just had our first meeting this Thursday, and I loved it. Now, I've played D&D in the past, never really DM'd before. I've practiced and done a little things here and there, but nothing where it was like, ooh, I had to set up my own story for. And I got to tell you, it was some of the most fun I've had in a very, very long time. And because I'm playing right now, I got all my D&D stuff behind me. I kind of change things up in the background depending what I'm doing. So for the next 2 months, my D&D stuff will be behind me because I'm doing this till the end of February. But I wanted to talk. When you play D&D, you can still have a simple story. Now, my idea is storytelling. I was talking about simple storytelling for the first half hour that my mic was off. So yay, I'm still a little shocked that I did that. But yeah, so like I said, I've taught storytelling for years. It's something that I truly am passionate about. I love watching movies. I love listening to audiobooks, podcasts, whatever, anything I can get my hands on that deals with storytelling. One of the reasons I love comics and loving comic strips, because growing up, there was a serialness there's always been a serialness to comics, but when I look at comic strips, I had to go back every day to read a story. Excuse me. And they would come to like completion on Saturday or Sunday. When you read a comic book, they come out monthly usually. So every month there was a serialness, and that's what I love about it. It's like, you know, you watch a TV series, right? Now you can binge everything. And I've done that recently with Cobra Kai. I did all, whatever, 8-10 episodes in a couple of hours. Well, however long it takes to do that. But, you know, when you watch a show and it's hour show, 30-minute show, you have a whole week now usually to think about, ooh, what's going to happen? And you get to think, and you're making up these stories in your head about what possibly could happen. And I always loved that of storytelling. Now, I learned storytelling through reading comics, through watching, you know, cartoons, TV shows, movies, talking with people, just telling stories. D&D is one of the best things I've ever done with my life for storytelling, because it's a collaborative storytelling game where, and I know there's people out there who will say, oh, it's evil and, you know, it promotes darkness and demons and stuff, but that's a whole mess from the 80s and what and it doesn't just because they use fantasy based things and there might be demons in there, it doesn't promote it. It actually promotes social interaction, reading, math, possibly even writing. Okay, there could be research, especially if you're the DM, so that more reading. There are people who are using it. I've read stories about doctors who are using it with people with anxiety and other social disorders and self-esteem issues, that they can pretend to be something else. There's a lot of benefits to playing these role-playing games where you can pick out to be a different character. Now, if you're not into the fantasy genre like Dungeons and Dragons, you like horror, there's things like Call of Cthulhu, where it's Lovecraftian based stories. If you are into sci-fi, you can play Star Wars. There is a system out there called GURPS, I believe it's called. Something like Generic Universal Role-Playing System. And they have things where you can play out there. You know, and you can play anything. There's superheroes, there's everything. So these storytelling systems are really great for people who want to be in comics, animation, film of some sort, because it really helps create the imagination, helps do things. When I worked with video games back in the 90s, and they were educational video games, so I had to work with people. Well, the projects were all about how do you teach kids about whatever topic we were doing. We kept it very simple. I worked on one that was based on a friend of mine's class project, and it was about the solar system. So basically, we had to tell a story about why you were on this spaceship and exploring the solar system. It was simple as that. And each planet, we said, we'll have a description, whatever, and then there were some little funny things that would happen if you interacted. Like, I designed a lot of the robots for it. I edited some of the videos, animated some parts of it, but I was more of a character designer and developer on that project. But you think of something like Mario. I'm wearing a Mario shirt right now. One of the oldest video games out there, right? What was the basic story? We're gonna forget Donkey Kong. We're gonna talk Super Mario. It was the princess was kidnapped, and you had to get through every level. It was a very simple level. All they did was say, hey, look, we got the princess captured. You got to get through whatever the challenge is. And there's going to be these little creatures. And every level, it just got harder and harder and harder until you got to the end. But it was the same. It was just a simple story. What was Sonic? Sonic is they took the idea of Super Mario and just changed it. And now it's a hedgehog. And what did you have to do? Instead of collecting coins, you collected rings. Instead of jumping onto a flag at the castle at the end, you ran through a little, flag or sign or whatever it was. I don't remember. But, that's all it was. It was a very simplistic story and concept. Andy, I will try to use subtitles. Hopefully, hopefully, I got to get that working for what's it called? Twitch that you're watching on. And thank you for watching. So anyway, all these things going into it. I was talking about in the beginning was like the old Hanna-Barbera superhero shows. Okay? And why did I choose them? And I always chose them as what do we call it? Simple storytelling. I grew up on these. Now, I was born in 76. These came out in 66 for the most part. I love them. I love the basic concept of them. And what was that basic concept? Well, the basic concept was, okay, let me just, someone gets in trouble, right? So usually it was someone's sidekick, or something was kidnapped, like in the Impossibles here. Like usually they were the singing group Impossibles, and when trouble happened, they became the music group Impossible. I mean the superhero Impossibles, and they'd go out and capture, or try to get the diamonds back from whatever villain. Space Ghost here, one of the most popular. He had a couple of sidekicks. Sidekicks basically got kidnapped, captured, whatever, and it gets out to him that he needs to go rescue them. So you had these annoying little sidekicks that, some people, right? Right here, Frankenstein Jr. Frankenstein Jr. was a Gigantor story, so he had to fight big beasts or whatever. The Galaxy Trio, what were they? They were basically space explorers. It was almost, people called them for help or whatever. So they get, basically they would start with a distress call. They have to go to the planet, and the problems would be, on the planet. Right? But it was almost kind of Star Trek-like for these three. Mytor, my favorite. Prehistoric hero. There was his love interest. I don't remember her name right now. Although they never showed it as a love interest. You just knew. She had a younger brother who was this annoying kid who would get into trouble, and Mytor would be the reason to go. He'd have to go and rescue him. Birdman had a really awesome plot device in here. It gets annoying, but basically, if he's away from the sun for too long, he loses his power. So if he had to go underground or get trapped somewhere where there was no sunlight, he lost his powers. And then somebody breaks him free, and then what happens? Boom, he regains his strength, and he's able to fight the bad guys. We come over to here, Shazam. Shazam is a genie. These two, I don't remember if they're brother or sister or not, but these two, they have a ring. They put the ring together, and Shazam is comes out, and he gave him this flying camel. All right, Fantastic Four. This is the only Hanna-Barbera superheroes here that are not original Hanna-Barbera characters. This is based on the Marvel comics for the most part. Moby Dick over here. This is one of his friends here, but there'd be underwater adventures, and Moby would have to help out. And then right here, one of the greats, the Herculoids, right? So here's Xandor. He's the human leader. His wife Tara, and their son, I believe, is right here, who's Dorno. Usually Dorno causes a lot of problems. And the Xandor and the Herculoids have to come and rest. So you have Igu, who's like a rock monster. Tundra, who's this, like flaming pellet shooting rhino. I believe his name was Zoc. I'm blanking right now, but Zoc shot laser beams. He was a flying dragon. And then you got Gleep and Gloop here, which were just shape-shifting blobs. And Xandor would scream, "Herculoids!" And they would all come running, and they would need to do stuff, There was a basic, generic story. Okay, so let's just, I'm just going to do this real quick. Let me add a little white here so I can write. And then I'll even go to black for now. All right. So this is what I use when I use comics. I used to have an app. I still have the app. I just got to update it. It's not on iOS or Android at the moment, but hopefully soon it will be. But when I teach basic storytelling and I'm teaching comics, right? A story, even though we're looking at something with a, and I'm just going to label them in a second here. So this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we know a story has to have a beginning, right? Has to have a middle, and it has to have an end. Now I break it up into these 4 parts. I know we have 3 parts, but I break it up into 4 here. So I got my intro, I got my setup, I got my climax here, and I got my resolution. Or I have a cliffhanger, depending on the type of story I'm doing. Okay. So in panel 1, and that's why I'm labeling them, panel 1 is the who, the what, the where. Okay. Panel 3 or 2 is what is the problem. Panel 3 is, this is the most exciting. Oops, spelt exciting wrong, sorry. Exciting part. And number 4 is, just to keep it easy, it's resolved. Okay. So this is my basic 4-part outline to tell any story. And I like to keep it simple. Now, using a Hanna-Barbera reference like Space Ghost, right? We introduce his sidekicks are on an alien planet, right? And they see in panel 2, I don't want to use the word panel because I'm not talking comics right now. I'm talking just story. So we go to introduce. So the sidekicks are on a planet having a picnic, which isn't too different than what they normally did. Number 2, they hear a noise. They go and investigate. They see it's a villain trying to steal, I don't know, rocks, special gems from the planet, right? So, but now they're caught. There's the setup. Now what happens is Space Ghost is radioed. Hey, we need, you need to rescue your people, blah, blah, blah. He comes in. The battle happens, right? That's the most exciting part. And how's it resolved? Bad guys captured. Now, there are things that could happen within here that we can add. For example, Space Ghost a lot of times would get captured himself. His bands, his power bands would be removed, and their little monkey friend would be, would turn himself invisible and get the bands back to Space Ghost so Space Ghost could save the day. All right. Now, it was a very formulaic show, and basically the show went like that every time. It was very simple. We're not trying to create the next Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or whatever. You're just keeping a very, very simple story. Now, I don't know if you guys heard this, and if I'm repeating myself, I do apologize. But when I create a lot of stories. And I mean a lot of stories. 1 second here. And I have things I've written that are very epic-like. They're not done, or I've had stuff in the process of being done. I have spent many years dealing with other stuff medically and whatnot that has prevented me from producing a lot of the stuff that I've wanted to. I'm in the process of making a change on all that. I've recently finished a children's book, and I haven't released it yet, only because I'm just saving some cash to get a barcode and ISBN so I can post it places. and sell it. I don't want to go directly through Amazon. I want to use some other things. Excuse me. So for me, I have that done, by the way. I have a comic. I'm working on stuff for people right now. I've mentioned before, because it's been announced, I'm doing some work for Parody Press with a friend of mine. I have an 8-page manga style comic I'm doing, and I'm working on some samples for spec work, which I don't normally do, but I just really want the project. So I'm doing stuff on spec for right now. So yeah, I got a lot of stuff going on, but I have my own projects too. And I want to bring back my Wiz character. I have a story I want to have out by fall. That'll be a webcomic called Dax Photon. It's a sci-fi adventure story. But I have stuff planned for years and years, for the next couple of years, on how I want to work on things. I'm sticking to my schedule. Excuse me. Obviously, paying gigs are going to come first, but I have my stuff. And I'm getting stuff together. Now, one of the things I'm working on this year for writing, doesn't mean I'm going to draw it. Everything depends on time and how fast I get other stuff done. But I created a story called Thunder Mark 7. Thunder Mark 7, what I did was I said, let me take Voltron, who I love. And I've loved both the original series that I grew up on and the new stuff, but I was really talking older stuff. And I said, what if they are mixed with the Swiss Family Robinson? What if the Swiss Family Robinson controlled Voltron? And I thought that would be a fun idea. There was shows like Lost in Space, which is basically them on a ship and going through the universe, which is basically the Swiss Family Robinson. But I thought it would be cooler, instead of them just being on a ship, what if they're on this really amazing battle robot? So I had to come up with a concept, and I said, how do I keep it simple? And I went to this process I just wrote out for you. And I have like a 7-8 page sample I'd give out at shows. And I'm working on it to be 32 to maybe 48 pages max. And the idea was, what if I took the concept from Thundercats? Okay? I mean, Thundercats took it from Superman. Superman, the world, Krypton's exploding. Thundercats, Thundera's getting ready to explode. And there are Thundercats trying to leave the planet. Now, in the story that we know in the original series, it was only the original Thundercats who left, but there were obviously more because we meet them throughout the series. And I said, well, what if I took that idea of the planet exploding and people trying to escape that planet? And the last ship leaves, and this family is stranded on a planet getting ready to die. It's going to explode. They all think it's the end, but then they find this, what they believe is a spaceship, and they get in it, and it's underground. As they blast out from underground and they're flying away from the planet as it explodes, the son, who's like an intelligent, like the IQ, genius type of kid, you hear him say, "Oh, Dad, I don't think we're on a spaceship." And that's how I end the sample. So now the idea is, I want to do 3 short stories, or maybe 4 if you include the beginning. So that chapter 1, if you want to call it chapters, is a very simple intro. Very simple. Planet's going to explode. We missed our ticket out. How do we get off the planet? We find another ship. We go. And at the end of the first chapter, it's revealed that it's a robot. Therein. The next story, they will discover more about the robot. Then the story after that, something will happen, and you learn there are some issues, and they're going to go into battle. The 4th story and the final story will be something else. I'm not gonna spoil it. I do have the idea. I'm just not gonna spoil it. I don't want to give away the story. I want you guys to read it when I do it. And the way I end it, I could always go back and revisit the story if I have another Thunder Mark 7 story to tell. But I think what it does is it keeps these kind of space ghostish, simplistic storytelling. I'm keeping it to like 4-8 pages, something I can tell quickly, you know. And when I mean quickly, reading quickly. Drawing, obviously, for those who draw, know it's going to take me a while just to even draw 4 pages. And if I'm doing a 32 to 48 page book, you know it's going to take me a long time to draw that. I do have another story that I created. I never did anything with, but it's a very interesting. I just did like I think it was a 3 or 4 page intro, and I don't even remember the name of it. That's how far back it goes. But it's another sci-fi story where, and this all comes up with the very simple story telling method that I'm using. Now, in this story, you're on an alien planet. I do a lot of sci-fi stuff, guys, that and fantasy. But you're on an alien planet, and the king who is dealing with a peace treaty gets kidnapped, and the peace treaty basically goes to hell, and there's going to be a war within the galaxy. We know the king is the only one who could bring peace. Okay, again, very simple ideas. And what happens? Well, the son who has these powers decides to leave and search for his father. And that's how I end it. You know, so the guy, the brother, you know, the son leaves his brother in charge, and you're going to find out later, and this is, I don't even know if I'm ever going to draw it, so I'll tell you. You find out that the brother is being manipulated by the uncle, and the uncle is really the main bad guy. So when the king is returned, the king and the 2 sons team up against the bad guy, you know, and they defeat the evil uncle. Now, could that sound complicated? Yes, but it was a very simplistic concept. It's something that has been done many times before. How many stories have you seen going back even to Shakespeare where it was an uncle? It was the bad uncle who wanted to get rid of the king, right? And you know, we could see this in tons and tons of stories. What I did, I didn't come up with a new idea. I just came up with I didn't come up with an original idea, but I came up on a new way of telling it. And I kept it incredibly simple. And so when the story happens, the story is really about the son who's out exploring, looking for his father. And it's going to be those adventures. That last, story, that ending is going to would be a simple 8 to 12 page story. But it's got that simple concept behind it. It's good versus evil. It's, and everything I attack is intro, setup, climax, resolution. That's how I do it. Unless I want to have a cliffhanger. But the way I write, and this is a good tip for those who are writing, and this comes from my comic strip background. Some of my teachers have told me this, but it was something that I always noticed a lot when I read comics. That last panel on every page should be written in a way, whether there's dialogue or it's just illustration, that makes you want to turn the page, makes you want to come back the next day or the next month to read the comic. That final image. So even if I end a story, there's always something I try to leave open in case I want to revisit. Now, that doesn't mean I don't resolve all the problems in my stories. I do, because I don't like to leave things like that. But there could be a little hint in an illustration, a way a character is looking, or just some wording that might leave it open. Like, honestly, I did that with Thundermark. I know the ending and how it's going to end, that it is going to be something I could revisit just by a single word. And people may not pick up on it. But if they do, like, oh, Okay, there's more story somewhere. Um, but the idea, again, is keep it simple. You know, there is, I'm sure everyone who studies storytelling knows about Joseph Campbell, knows about the monomyth, and how there's characters throughout different myths that are the same, and we basically, doesn't matter what culture we're from, we tell the same stories. That's really what the monomyth is. And I love Campbell's work. I love I've read the book Hero with a Thousand Faces about 3 times in my life now. Um, you know, I know the monomyth basically back to front, and it's great when you want to tell big, in-depth, epic stories like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and whatnot. But when you're learning, when you're starting out, when you just want to put work out, you got to keep it simple. It's one of the reasons I created my app. It's one of the things I've been teaching for years in storytelling. Um, when I work, and this is one of the reasons I want to do the video, and for those who were trying to tune in the beginning and I missed in the first half hour with my mic on mute, um, when I teach and I work with kids, doesn't matter the age, could be adults too. They're used to stories that they watch on TV, movies, video games, maybe even comics. They all want to create these crazy worlds where there's so much going on. They spend so much time on world building that they don't learn or they don't have their story fleshed out. So if you're doing something, I say start simple. You going back to the Hanna-Barbera stuff, we look at let's take the Mighty Mightor, for example. He's my favorite Hanna-Barbera superhero. He's prehistoric times, right? So what happens? He's a caveman. Maybe there is some type of man villain. The villain is, here's a bad guy who controls dinosaurs, and by the way, this is an episode. Controls dinosaurs and is attacking the village, right? So what happens? Tor becomes Mightor. He raises his clubs. You hear that wah 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 wah, whatever. There's a like whooshing sound, and he turns into Mightor. Mightor comes out. He's gonna go fight the guy, but what happens? The little sidekick, the love interest's kid brother, thinks he can save the day. He gets captured. Mightor has to do something, to save him, and then he's able to defeat the guys. So very formulaic, very basic. I'm a caveman superhero. All of a sudden, because he's a caveman, we now know we're going to do prehistoric style bad guys. Now, whether you want to go in the world where dinosaurs lived in the caveman times, which we know in reality they didn't, but remember, suspension of disbelief. There's so many people out there, especially the young kids these days, that don't have suspension of disbelief. They have trouble playing make-believe. They're a little too serious. I don't know if it's because they're all on their phones or they're getting all this real world information, even through shows. But, there are kids I've worked with 6 years old telling me, and I'm talking about Superman or something, and I'm drawing him like, well, people can't fly, so this isn't real. Yeah, it's not real, kid. It's make-believe, but let's pretend that it could happen. No, it doesn't exist, so why should I? I'm like, you're 6 years old. Let's have fun. Let's play with your imagination. And I don't get angry at the kid, but I feel bad because I want these kids to explore, use their imaginations. I did as a kid. There's so many people, I'm sure people I'm talking with, even at home, you guys, when you were kids, maybe you safety pinned a towel around your neck and pretended you were a superhero, and ran around your neighborhood or something. If you're an actor, ever acted, you're pretending to be something else. You're using your imagination to make people believe that you're whoever your character's supposed to be. It's the same thing when I play Dungeons and Dragons. I have a character. I'm not out there talking like the character usually, but I have a character that I got to think about how this character would act and how I'd interact and how this character is going to interact with the rest of the group that I'm playing with. So I feel bad. I want these kids to use their imagination. And when I work with kids, it's all about inspiring their imagination. Excuse me. Um, that's all I want to do. I just want to have them have fun. So to teach at a young age how to tell stories, well, and I'm not saying teaching at 6 or 7 years old. When I'm talking about Superman with somebody that age, I'm kind of showing them how to draw, or keep it simple, and how you draw like a 6-year-old version of Superman. You know, not like if I was dealing with a 15 or 20-year-old or something. There's a completely different way of telling that story. So, or to teach them how to draw. But my whole concept is keep it simple. Can you do an epic? Yes. Do you want to start with an epic? Absolutely not. Don't worry about the world building. At least right now, when you had, like I said, with my tour, all of a sudden, you're in prehistoric times. Just make your decision. Do dinosaurs exist, or are you going up with woolly mammoths? What's going to be? That's all you need to decide on your world. Because if you're doing prehistoric, you're probably going to have volcanoes, caves, jungle type of terrain, and boom, you have that. If you're going to go sci-fi, like Space Ghost, all of a sudden now and what I love about stuff like that is you can land on any type of planet in a story like that. So you could open yourself up to, hey, I want to do a Conan story. Well, Space Ghost lands on a planet that's, like barbarian type. Or I could be like, I want to tell a story that is, I don't know, about cooking. Well, he now lands on a planet full of chefs. It's whatever you want to do. You can add them into that prehistoric world. It could be time traveled back into the 80s and a world stuck in the 80s. He lands on a planet like that. So you can have so much fun, and that's one of the reasons I like science fiction. But then treat every planet he lands on as a very simple story. What's going to be the problem? Well, we go back to the introducing. Well, we introduced him. He just landed on a planet. All right. The planet is, I don't know. Let's say the planet is full of some kind of natural resource, right? And he lands there basically to fill up his spaceship. What happens? He sees people robbing the space gas station. Okay, and he's not going to have any gas to get out of the solar system. So what happens? He goes after them. He captures them, and gas for everybody. Okay, I just told a very simple story. How detailed I want to get into that, or what do I want to do? Like, you remember, I'm not drawing this in 4 panels. I'm just saying this is my story. This could be an 8-page story, 3-page story, whatever it is. How many panels do you want to use to introduce? How many panels do you want to set up? How many panels to get to the climax? And how many panels to resolve? So like when I look at this in pages, I usually think 1 page to intro, maybe a page or two to set up. And then I'm kind of in the middle, what's going on. And if this is an 8-page story, by page 6, we're at the climax. Maybe even by page 7. And by the end of page 7 to page 8, we're doing the resolution. And if you work with something like that in a sci-fi story like Space Ghost, as I used for example, you now have 8 pages that you could do. And if you collect those 8 pages as a comic and you have them on 4 different planets, you now have a 32-page book. All right? And they don't have to relate to each other unless you want to. Here's a guy, I flew and I landed on Conan's world. I flew and I landed on the world of the 80s. I landed in a world of Universal monster movies. And now that's all you're doing. And by the way, what's great about doing something like a Universal monster movie type of thing, or just monsters in general, characters like Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the werewolf, or the Wolfman, whatever you want to call it, they're all public domain. So you can go look for public domain characters to use and just set them in different worlds. And now you have somebody explain this. And it could be something like the TV show Sliders, if you guys remember that. What did they do? They went to parallel worlds, right? They slid. So they basically went through a wormhole. You can have that. That's how your guy travels. Doesn't have to be through science fiction. Could be so many things you do. But the simplicity of storytelling and keeping it simple will help you create much better, in my opinion, products, better stories that you can collect. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have a common theme going throughout. Like if we take a character, and again, I keep going to Space Ghost because he's just easy, who has to go from planet to collect something until he gets to the end where he has to put these machinery together or whatever to stop the big bad. Then, hey, you can say, hey, look, I'm going to do these as 4 pages or 8 pages. Remember, you want to work in fours, because if you take a regular sheet of paper and fold it in half, you have 4 sides to it. So that's how printing of a book happens. So always think in multiples of 4. But yeah, if you do 4 page, 8 page, whatever it is to get you to that point, you can then collect and say, oh, well, I wrote 8 stories of 8 page stories. Excuse me, do the math. All of a sudden you have a 64 page book. And I'm talking comics just because outside of a pencil and paper, you don't need anything to tell the story. If you're animating, you need other stuff. You need cameras if you're doing it traditionally, or a program like Adobe Animate or Toon Boom Harmony or something. You're gonna need software. With pencil and paper, that's all you need. And then what are you gonna do? You can scan into the computer, lay it out, color it, whatever you want to do. But you could do it all in black and white. You could do it all in pencil. Some of the best comics I've seen a few that were just people drawing by hand and pencil. So what do? You get your paper, you measure it out, you draw. And then you can take to a photocopier to have them scanned in or just photocopied. I mean, there's lots of different ways to do it. But traditionally, you have all the materials home to make a comic. Paper, pencil, rulers, erasers, maybe felt tip pens or brush markers or whatever you're using. And as a rule, just as a tip, I wouldn't color the originals. I would photocopy in color or scan them in color. Excuse me. But that's the idea of what I was basically trying to talk about today is, keep it simple. Think about the 4, I'll use them as panels, but the 4-step process. And what I like to do, and I don't have a piece of paper near me that I could use. I can't fold that up. Do I have anything I can fold? Give me a second. Okay, so I take a regular sheet of paper, and this is how I do work this way a lot of times. Sometimes I'll just draw the lines out, but I'll divide it into 4s, right? I open it up, and I can hold it whichever way. This way, but I'll label 1, 2, it's backwards for you, so I'll do it this way. 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? That's the way you would look, I guess, but I label the panels. Then I take notes. So if I know panel 1's to introduce, in panel 1, I write what everything in there is. So what am I introducing the story to? What is my setup? What is my climax, and what is my resolution? And now that I have all these notes, I can then take it and I can start plotting out my comic or my animation or whatever it is I'm doing. So with just 4 panels, 4 squares, I can write plot an entire comic. I haven't scripted it, but I'm plotting what happens. So basically I'm working through bullet points. I say intro and then bullet point, blah, 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 blah. I just write however I write in notes, and there you go. And then when I go to actually write my script, this is my is basically my guide. And then after I write my script, then I can take it and start thumbnailing it out and doing the whole process of drawing. But I recommend doing this. All right. I mean, everybody has different ways to work, but if you're just starting out, having something to plot or helping you plot your story is great. Is a great method. And thinking about those 4 things: what am I introducing? What am I setting up? What am I, what's the most exciting part happening, and how does it resolve? Or is there a cliffhanger? Is this going to be, I'd like to, on these 4 panels here, I like to end with a resolution, But that doesn't mean if this is going to be a multiple, let's say you're plotting out a multiple storyline comic, or multi-issue comic series, like say it's going to be 3 issues. How do I end each issue? I'll go back, and if this is my overall plot, right, for all 3 issues, I'll make another fold another piece of paper, get 4 pounds, and what do I want in issue 1? Oh, okay. Issue 2 is another sheet of paper. Issue 3 is another sheet of paper. So when I get to the resolution on issues 1 and 2, it's really just the climax. I'm adding the climax to it. I'm not climax, the cliffhanger. How do I want them to leave off so that when I get to issue 3, how does the ending resolve? All right. I do this quite often. Sometimes I just take a piece of paper and with a pencil or pen, I just draw a line across. I've done this digitally in things like Microsoft Word or Pages, or I'll use my cell phone and just go on in my notes and I'll write intro and then, however works for you. I usually carry paper with me, so I like that. But when I don't have it, I got my phone, which is charging right now. Sorry, thought I saw something I needed to respond to quickly. But yeah, so I think I'm gonna wrap up today. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for letting me know sound was on. Mike, I really appreciate that. I got to figure out how to get subtitles going on into Twitch or even YouTube. I haven't done them yet, so I need to set things up. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back next Saturday with another Storytelling Saturday. And Tuesday night, I do my regular Get in Tune, where I interview creators. And this Tuesday, I'm going to have Steve Conley from The Middle Age on. All right. Mike, thanks for tuning in. Thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Tune in Tuesday night. I'm looking forward to talking with Steve. I love his art. Every time I see it posted somewhere, I stop and I just stare. His coloring is amazing. So I look forward to chatting with him. His story's good too. I wouldn't have him on if his story was, I want to promote you guys. You know me. I like to promote things I'm really enjoying. So I love what Steve's doing, and I got to get you on sometime, Mike. So we'll figure that out at some point. But again, thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll hopefully see you guys Tuesday night, 8:30 Eastern. Otherwise, I'll be back Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. All right? You guys have a great rest of your day, great weekend, and I'll see you guys later. All right.